Okay, for more updates on this story, we are joined by CGTN's Angela Coppola in Johannesburg and, of course, Philly Haza. We'll see if we can get Angela a little later, but let's start with you, Phil. Thank you for joining us on Africa Live. Well, first things first, Phil, Nigerian nationals have been affected the most. What has been the reaction from the government?
Well, thank you, Richard. The reaction from the government, we got a very strong reaction yesterday from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, that's Mr. Geoffrey Nyema. He stated on social media, on his Twitter handle, how that the attack in South Africa on Nigerians living there is sickening, is disheartening, especially in the absence of police protection or enough police protection. He also stated strongly that definite measures will be taken. He, however, never gave much details of those definite measures, but between yesterday and today, there's been a lot of response from many Nigerians, millions of Nigerians home and abroad, insisting that the government give more details of how this statement will pan out to ensure that the attacks are killed or reduced. And just this morning, even as we speak, the Minister of Foreign Affairs has summoned the ambassador, a South African ambassador, to Nigeria for an emergency meeting. As we speak, they are currently meeting and dialoguing on those measures, or dialoguing on stronger measures that should be taken to end the spate of killings, especially coming from a threat that these attacks might continue by some, people on social media, especially South Africans, still insisting on whatever reasons they think the xenophobic attacks should continue.
All right, Philly Haza, thank you for that update. I'd like you to stay with us. Don't go away. I'd like to get Angela Coppola in on this conversation. Angelo, thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. My question to you is, what is the latest from Johannesburg and the Pretoria areas in regards to the ongoing violence? Angelo.
Richard, what's happened overnight is we've seen the sporadic xenophobic attacks move from Jeppestown in the south to Alexandra on the eastern side of Johannesburg near Sandton. And we've seen tyres being burnt, roads blockaded, shops being looted. We're also hearing of hundreds of shops being looted in the Germiston area, which is also overnight and on the eastern or southeastern side of the city. So Jeppestown relatively quiet except for that incident with one of the journalists yesterday afternoon. Germiston blew up last night. Alexandra is still bubbling under. In fact, JMPD, that's the local authorities, are operating in that area right now. We understand that some 800 local law enforcement have been deployed around the city to try and manage these hotspots as they pop up. But for now, the focus seems to be on what's happening in the Alexandra township, which, of course, as you know, borders onto Sandton. So you have that big dichotomy between the richest part of Africa versus some of the poorest parts of Africa in terms of Alex and Soweto. So at the moment, lots of issues happening on that side of town, Richard.
Angelo, thanks for sharing. Well, it's come to our attention, Angelo, that the security minister was meeting with community leaders earlier today. What was on the agenda of that meeting? Can you share with us, Angelo?
Okay, I'm not sure I heard the question exactly there, Richard. The line's really bad. But what's happening right now, you know what, Richard, would you please repeat that? Sorry.
Well, the security minister, Angelo, had a community meeting with leaders today. It's come to our attention that that took place. What was on the agenda, if you know?
Okay, so that meeting was set up yesterday afternoon on the streets outside one of the most notorious hostels in the Jeppestown area. The minister met with the local leader, and they are planning to meet in about 2 or 3 hours' time. That's at 2:30 local time this afternoon, and they're meeting at the Jeppestown police station, which is a fairly secure environment. So we're expecting large crowds outside. He said to us yesterday that he really just wants to have a conversation with the people and try to understand what actually happened and why they went on this rampage that they have done for 2 days. Of course, you'll recall that those hostels were hotspots during the last bout of xenophobia that we saw in the Johannesburg area, and it doesn't look like anything's changed or improved. Those hostels are overcrowded. Living conditions inside there are absolutely atrocious. Most of the people in there are unemployed and they are really desperate. So They have been attacking shops in that area before. They've been attacking cars. This, however, has been probably the most damage that they've caused in a short space of time in terms of what's happening. So the police minister is hoping to get some kind of clarity and maybe some commitment, I'm assuming, from the local leaders that there won't be any more attacks, looting, xenophobia or arson, in fact. So we'll have to wait for the outcome of that meeting. It's going to be a fairly long, drawn-out affair because there's lots of protocol to follow, but we'll keep you posted as that unfolds.
All right, Angelo, thank you so much. I'll come right back to you for our final question, but let's get Philly Haza and Abuja back in on this conversation. Phil, from your perspective, how is President Muhammadu Buhari likely to deal with the situation on his state visit to South Africa tomorrow? Phil.
Oh, thank you, Richard. Yes, we know that the World Economic Forum is kickstarting on Wednesday in Cape Town in South Africa. And I'll expect that, considering the fact that these attacks have been on, and this is, has taken the headlines, the media and all of that, I'd expect that more serious talks will go on between both presidents of Africa's economic giants. You recall that just recently in Japan at the African Development Conference, both presidents started talking already about this issue, where the South African president related his deepest concerns about the spate of attacks on Nigerians. They are also expected to resume these discussions tomorrow. Once those presidents meet in South Africa, and also a state visit by the president in October, also still majorly on this issue, and of course bilateral trade relations. But if you look at the kind of reaction that has come from many Nigerians, they are saying that Nigeria is home to over 120 South African businesses or companies operating here, including the likes of MTN, DSTV, and all of that, and they have some form of the largest share of customer base in Africa here in Nigeria, and they're saying that the president should take up sanctions on these businesses. But also economic experts are saying that these businesses are also they're also home to many Nigerians who are employed in these businesses, and therefore sanctioning them or closing them down, shutting them down might do more harm to Nigerians than good. So it's actually a very, very tough one, and I expect that this killing stop once those both presidents of the two countries meet to discuss and find ways. There must be ways, especially to stop the kind of rhetoric statements, derogatory statements on social media by some form of South African leaders in some quarters, releasing statements saying that Nigerians are about taking up the cities in South Africa, they're successful and they're taking up their jobs and all of that. At least those statements have to be stopped so that they don't encourage more attacks on Nigerians. But we'll just have to wait and hope that the dialogue between both presidents come up with some form of measures to end the attacks.
All right, Philly Haza, great reporting. Well, Angelo, is right back to you. Thanks for sticking around. Angelo, you have my final question. What kind of impact are the attacks likely to have on an already struggling South African economy? Angelo.
Well, Richard, it's very simple in terms of what's happening at the moment. And we've just come from a press conference at the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And they're saying that their members, who range from some of the biggest corporate listed companies on the JSE to those 2 and 3 and 4 small people operations, the likes of Total and Coca-Cola are saying they're not going into hotspots or affected areas or areas that have been hit by the xenophobic attacks because they're concerned about their assets. Obviously Total and their fuel tankers, and Coca-Cola in terms of their trucks, and they're concerned that they will get attacked and that not only will their staff be compromised, but also their assets will be in danger of getting looted or destroyed. So there's an anxiety, not so much in terms of the smaller operators that are on the street and have shuttered their shops down, and those that haven't been looted are still shuttered and not operating. But the bigger suppliers into that general area are saying we're not going in until there's complete calm restored and those roads have been cleared. And that's specifically in the case of Alex and also in Jeppystown, where the roads are almost impassable at the moment. Germiston, we'll go and have a look at it a bit later, but the bottom line is it's affecting perceptions. And the big concern, of course, is that with WEF Africa about to take place from tomorrow, everyone's wondering how much of a tougher sell it's going to be for the South Africans, the government and the private sector, to sell and attract investment into the country when we have these attacks happening, when we see this violence and this looting and this criminality happening on our television stations. So there's perceptions, and then there's that other risk that we are facing right now. Richard?
Angelo, thank you so much. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your insight and analysis. Thank you both for bringing us this story, and thank you for breaking it down for us. Well, for more news on the xenophobic attacks in South Africa and for more analysis on what is happening, we are joined by Kibra van Heerden, an analyst and researcher at the Center of Risk Analysis within the Institute of Race Relations in Johannesburg. Kibra, thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. First things first, why do you think, I think that's the appropriate question, why do you think this is happening in South Africa? Why now?
Well, our police minister, Bheki Cele, has said that there are no xenophobia elements attached to these acts of violence. However, we have seen that the violence that have erupted in the Johannesburg CBD and in the Pretoria CBD are mainly in areas where you find large groups of people from Somalia, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nigeria, foreign nationals from who own businesses and shops in these areas. A lot of people are of the opinion that this is actually a spillover from xenophobia that originated in the Pretoria CBD last week, where we saw taxi drivers allegedly retaliating against the killing of one of their own members, another taxi driver, allegedly by a Nigerian national. So I think there is plenty of evidence that shows that there is some xenophobia elements attached to these acts of violence. And also, if you look at the history of South Africa, South Africa has had many bursts of xenophobic violence occurring since the 1990s. And it is also not that surprising given the difficult and turbulent time that South Africa is going through at the moment. We recently heard that South Africa's unemployment rate has increased to nearly 30%. Young people who are entering the labor market, around 50% of them will struggle to find a job in the next year. We've also seen rising inequality. We've also seen small businesses coming under immense pressure. This is partly due to low economic growth and some hostile policies from the government, too much regulation on small businesses. So people in South Africa, especially those in working class and poorer areas, are having a very tough time. And this creates an environment of frustration, of anger, and social tension. And then when you, for example, have political elites also making negative comments about foreign nationals, like, for example, Herman Mashaba, the DA mayor of Johannesburg, have on several occasions alluded that foreign nationals in Johannesburg are the cause of disorder in the city. David Mukura, the premier of Gauteng, has also been have also made negative comments about foreign nationals.
All right.
So when you have that and you throw that in the mix of an already unstable situation, these acts of violence can erupt very quickly.
All right, Kibra van Heerden, let's leave it there for now. Again, thank you for your insights and your expertise on this subject matter. Moving on, let's revisit our story on the violence in South Africa. So what is xenophobia? Here is a detailed history of the situation in South Africa and the entire world.
South Africa continues to be associated with xenophobia more than any other country in Africa. However, the country ranks third on the continent behind Libya and Egypt. Globally, India, Lebanon, Bahrain, the Philippines, Kuwait, Palestine, and South Korea rank high. Xenophobia is the fear or hatred of that which is perceived to be foreign or strange. In most European and Asian countries, xenophobia is manifested in the form of racism, radicalization, and religious segregation. South Africa has been grappling with xenophobia even before the end of apartheid. In the mid-80s and early 90s, Mozambicans and Congolese were mostly targeted. In this southern African nation, competition for resources has been cited as the major cause of these attacks. According to a 2004 study by the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation, most South Africans believed then that undocumented immigrants were behind criminal attacks in the country. In another study conducted by the Pew Research Organization in 2018, it was revealed that 62% of South Africans viewed immigrants as a social burden. 61% thought immigrants were behind criminal acts. The research also revealed that the migrant community increased from 2 million to 4 million between 2010 and 2017. The worst xenophobic riots happened in May 2008. 67 people were killed, with Zimbabweans, Malawians, Nigerians, and even Somalis being targeted. Interestingly, 21 of these were native South Africans. The United Nations and the African Union have both been on the forefront of fighting xenophobia. Inflammatory and divisive statements by world leaders have been blamed for the rise of xenophobia and racism in the world. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
The Ebola epidemic in the Democratic Republic of Congo has claimed the lives of many parents who left children infected with the deadly disease. Healthcare workers are not allowed to touch the children because of the risk of getting infected. But a group of women who have been cured of Ebola have stood in. They are known as the lullaby singers. CGTN's Chris Ochemringa caught up with them in the eastern DRC town of Beni and now reports.
Rebecca Katungu is a survivor of Ebola living in the DRC's eastern town of Beni. She contracted the disease in May this year, but she was taken early for treatment and was cured.
When I got infected with Ebola, I was put on treatment at a unit inside our hospital. I'm now free of the disease.
She's now immune to Ebola because her system has developed antibodies that protect her against reinfection. Rebecca and other women like her now take care of children infected with Ebola at a treatment center in Beni. They have been nicknamed the Lullaby Singers. Neema Lepisa is one of these women who's taken care of many children orphaned by the epidemic.
The health experts asked us to start taking care of children whose parents are in isolation or dead because we cannot get reinfected with Ebola.
She feeds and soothes the babies in the absence of their mothers. The women who have volunteered to take care of children infected with Ebola are playing a vital role in the fight against the disease. Records from health experts show that the current outbreak in the DRC has affected more children than the one that occurred in West Africa between 2014 and 2016. Healthcare workers treating Ebola patients cannot touch the children because they could be infected. And so the only human touch the children get is from lullaby singers like Rebecca and Neema. The women also help spread the word that Ebola can be cured if patients are treated early. Chris Ochemringa, CGTN, Beni, Democratic Republic of Congo.
You are watching Africa Live on CGT, and we'll see you on the other side of the break with more stories. Here's a look at what's ahead. Jihadists wreak havoc in northern parts of Mozambique. And South Sudan's government urged to trace over 4,000 people separated by conflict.
In 70 years, China has undergone unprecedented transformation. From its old industrial base in the northeast to its new manufacturing powerhouse in the southeast and to its emerging southwest. CGTN offers you a panoramic view of contemporary China. Our crews will travel along 3 different routes and come to you live from dozens of locations and free mobile studios. Join us for an all-inclusive look at China on our TV channel and digital platforms, September the 9th to the 20th. It is New China, then and now, in celebration of the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China, only on CGTN.
No one again began holding guns. Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Welcome back to Mozambique now, where Sunday's attack in a small village in northern Mozambique has affected the daily routine of local residents. The inhabitants of Aldeia da Paz village are the latest victims of unknown Islamist militants wreaking havoc in the southern African nation. CGTN's Daniel Arap Moy has more.
The village of Aldeia da Paz in northern Mozambique was once a bustling city. Farmers went about their daily lives tending to crops near its border with Tanzania. But all this changed after a deadly jihadist attack on Sunday night.
They came out of nowhere and burnt my house. Now we live with nothing. We have nothing left. We live like this now.
I don't know. It was night, but I can tell you that there were a lot of them. There were young people and women too.
The attackers left residents grappling with fear, and they are calling on the government to come to their rescue.
I urge the government to do all it can to put a stop to this war so that we can get back to a normal life.
Say who they are, show them and act to stop the attacks. This is our request to the authorities because the poor are dying. Most people have lost almost everything they have and losing their lives, and we cannot let that happen.
Pope Francis is expected to visit Indian Ocean nation following the 2 devastating cyclones that claimed more than 600 lives. Jihadists have so far killed at least 300 civilians, displacing thousands others over the past 2 years. With dozens of villages wiped off, many are holding on to hope that they will soon start to rebuild their lives. Daniel Arap Moy, CGTN.
South Sudan's government is being urged to step up efforts to trace over 4,000 missing persons and to help reunite them with their families. Thousands of people have been displaced by the 6-year conflict in the country.
Alice Nyagula is a 30-year-old mother of 4. She last saw her brother and his wife in 2013. They were separated when war broke out in South Sudan's capital, Juba. He left behind 3 of his children who are now looked after by Alice.
If someone is dead, the news about his death can reach his or her relatives. Even if you have not seen the body, you will believe that the person is dead. But there's no news about my brother, So I will continue to look for him.
The International Committee of the Red Cross says cases of missing persons increased due to the 6 years of civil war in South Sudan. The ICRC says other forms of violence, such as cattle rustling, are also responsible for the separation of people from their families.
As part of our work on the missing in South Sudan, the ICRC advocates for legal frameworks and mechanisms for missing persons and for support to families of the missing.
Children with missing parents struggle for services such as education and health. Many parts of South Sudan do not have telecommunications or internet network. Contacts are sometimes impossible between family members living in different parts of the country. South Sudan's government says it is working to implement a peace deal which it says will make it easier to trace missing persons.
I believe that whatever we do in contributing to bringing lasting peace to this great country, and together we shall achieve it.
For Alice Nyagula, whether there is peace or not, she says she will continue to look for her brother. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
The first ever Chinese Film Week has opened in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, as part of activities to mark the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. During the week, Kenyans will have the opportunity to explore Chinese cinema and gain a deeper understanding of the Chinese culture. CGTN's Daniel Arap Moy has more in this report.
Yes, so that you can launch and say that the film week has begun.
The launch of the Chinese Film Week comes as China marks 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. Over the past 70 years, under the leadership of the Communist Party of China, the Chinese people have fought hard with the determination to find a path of development suited to their own condition. China has now become the world's second largest economy, lifting millions of its people out of poverty. The Chinese Film Week in Kenya is one of the activities being used to celebrate the 70th anniversary as relations between the two countries rises.
In recent years, China-Kenya relations have developed by leaps and bounds. More and more Kenyans are studying Chinese language or going to China for study or visit. I believe the Film Week will provide a window for Kenyans to know more about the history, the culture, and development of China.
The rapid growth of Chinese entertainment industry gives an opportunity for enrichment of our local content. It also offers opportunity for our artists to learn from Chinese artists how to enrich their performances in entertainment.
During the Chinese Film Week, 9 movies will be shown to the public. The films will touch different topics with themes ranging from drama, comedy, action, and romance.
Our cooperation with China on culture and in general and in film in particular have been running for a long period of time and continues to grow over the years.
Last year alone, the box office sales in China reached $8.5 billion. The Chinese box office is expected to register $12.28 billion by 2020, surpassing North America as the world's largest film market. Daniel Arap Moy, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Hong Kong SAR Chief Executive Carrie Lam says she's never told the central government she wanted to resign. She made the remark as she briefed the media on the latest situation in the city Tuesday morning. Earlier, our reporter Hei Cui Hui told us more about Lam's address from Hong Kong.
Actually, it's been a routine for Carrie Lam to meet the press on Tuesday morning every week. But today's presser came under great attention because before that, a piece of audio recording was leaked, and which indicates that Carrie Lam would may want to quit her job. But at the presser, when asked about this issue, Carrie Lam stressed that she has never issued a resignation to the central government, and she remains confident that she can lead her team to help Hong Kong out of the recent unrest. Now let's take a listen.
由開始到現在，
From the beginning, I have never submitted my resignation to the central government. This is a clear message. The reason behind that is I think and I believe that I can lead my team to take Hong Kong out of this predicament. With 2 months of chaos, I understand the situation in Hong Kong is very difficult. And I don't know when can we be lifted out of the chaos, but still, I have the confidence and responsibility to handle the current situation.
China's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office of the State Council says the task of ending violence and chaos in Hong Kong is a cardinal issue on which Hong Kong's future hinges. Speaking at a press conference, a spokesperson said the rioters' actions are no longer peaceful assemblies. He said they would constitute violent crimes in any country. And he said the rioters' target is no longer just the controversial fugitive bill. Instead, he said they are intent on paralyzing the Hong Kong SAR government and turning Hong Kong into an independent or semi-independent entity. The spokesperson said the central government firmly supports Hong Kong's leader. He stressed that things have now come to a crucial juncture in safeguarding the bottom line of one country, two systems principle and maintaining Hong Kong's prosperity and stability.
A system of universal suffrage in Hong Kong must accord with the basic law and the decisions of the NPC Standing Committee, and it must conform to Hong Kong's political status. Only through such a system can it choose a chief executive who loves the country and Hong Kong, and who has the trust of the central government and the endorsement of the people of Hong Kong. And only such a system can ensure full and accurate implementation of one country, two systems principle.
Meanwhile, protests spilled over to campuses on schools, and schools reopened on Monday after summer recesses. Some universities saw demonstrations as students wore black and masked and chanted slogans. The beginning of September marks a new academic year for students in China. However, the ongoing unrest in Hong Kong has affected many teenagers, as some have walked out of the classes and others are being bullied in school for political reasons. CGTN's Cui Hui Hao has more.
While they should have been starting a new semester in school, they chose to skip classes and go on strike. Clad in gas masks along with their formal white school uniforms, some students in Hong Kong participated in the strike by boycotting their first 2 days of classes. The Hong Kong SAR government strongly opposes any form of student strikes.
Schools are not a place for political conflicts. Student strikes can harm the learning environment for the youth of Hong Kong.
Following the riots on Saturday night, 63 people were arrested by Hong Kong police this past Sunday on suspicion of illegal assembly and possessing explosives and weapons. Among the arrested, many were young faces, including a 13-year-old who was found to have petrol bombs and lighters. Earlier on August 26, Hong Kong police said they had arrested a 12-year-old among 86 protesters over an intense weekend of protests. With the ongoing unrest in the city, Hong Kong educators have expressed worries.
The problems that students' attitude and values are distorted and how to correct them have troubled teachers. I think we should play an exemplary role in ways of loving and caring and stabilize the mood of the students.
While some are walking out of class, others, often the children of Hong Kong police, are being bullied and threatened at school.
My 13-year-old daughter was spoken to by a sports coach and told that she should be, that what her father was doing was disgusting and she should be upset at what my role is, and she's 13 years old.
Young people are the future of Hong Kong. Educators hope students will not be distracted by the rioters and focus on their academic work. Cui Hui Hao, CGTN.
We've got your business news coming up after the break. Let's take a look at the headlines. China lodges a complaint against the U.S. at the World Trade Organization over American import duties. Cape Town, South Africa is all set for the 2019 World Economic Forum on Africa that starts on Wednesday.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's turn to the ongoing trade war between China and the United States. Beijing has lodged a complaint against the U.S. with the World Trade Organization over American import duties. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce says Washington's latest tariffs violate the consensus reached by the presidents of China and the U.S. at a meeting in late June. The ministry also says that China will firmly defend its legal rights in accordance with the World Trade Organization rules. Washington began imposing additional 15% tariffs on a variety of Chinese goods on Sunday, including footwear, smartwatches, and flat panel televisions. China responded with new duties on American products, including crude oil. The 28th session of the World Economic Forum on Africa takes place in Cape Town, South Africa from Wednesday, September the 4th to Friday, September the 6th. This year's focus is shaping inclusive growth and shared futures in the fourth industrial revolution. CGTN's Angela Coppola reports.
Over 1,000 delegates will be on hand, but there's a dark cloud hanging over the conversations that will take place in the mother city, Cape Town, this week.
So the issue of the trade wars and these trade tensions is a very important one for us. And I'm quite certain that during the conversations, this issue will keep coming to the fore, in order that the message must get through, particularly to those people in Washington, that these trade wars are not helpful to us and to the global economy.
The meeting will focus on the fourth industrial revolution and how it can enable economic growth on the continent. But the question keeps coming up. Is Africa ready for the fourth industrial revolution, especially when it comes to skills?
We as a continent, and South Africa as well, are challenged in terms of the low education base that we have when we look at our entire populations, and the fourth industrial revolution just creates more pressure. The way we choose to see it, and here I take the liberty of quoting Professor Klaus Schwab, is that the fourth industrial revolution can actually help us to catalyze some of the gaps that emerge from the first revolution, second revolution, and the third revolution. We should not see them as separate issues. It's really more as the same spectrum and moving in tandem.
The forum happens soon after the continent ratified the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Against this background of these trade wars, nevertheless, Africans are organizing themselves into the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, so we appreciate that very much.
The key themes around this World Economic Forum Africa are essential for the development of the continent and its 54 countries. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Approximately 155 million mobile money transactions worth $2.7 billion are conducted in Somalia every month. This makes the country one of the most active mobile money markets in the world, with over 70% of its adults using the services regularly. CGTN's Abdelaziz Bouteflika explores how mobile money has impacted the Somali economy.
Mulki Mohammed is doing her shopping at this popular mall in downtown Mogadishu. Business is booming in the Somali capital, with shops such as this operating until late at night. Traders hope to take advantage of improved security in the city to accommodate last-minute shoppers. Telecom companies are largely credited for improving sales in major towns. Mulki is using her mobile to pay her expenses and is not worried about the safety of her money, as it's more secure than physical cards and cash.
Before, we had to go to the bank, fill various forms and queue to receive money. Mobile companies now have a direct means from which we can access our money directly from our mobile phones. I can now receive and send money from my account to my phone in a matter of seconds.
Mobile payment has increased our sales volume. Our clients purchase things from us easily through their phones. Unlike cash payment, we don't worry about balance. Telecom companies allow us to send money no matter how big or small the product or service being bought.
The country has a vibrant telecommunications sector that has thrived despite decades of conflict and instability. Virtually all mobile telecommunication operators in the country provide mobile-to-mobile payments at no extra cost, facilitating trade in the country. Leading banks have also partnered with such companies to ensure their clients can access their money at any time through their mobile phones.
Lack of banknotes and weak currency values are some of the factors that has led to the growth of mobile cash payments. For instance, 25,000 Somali shillings is equivalent to $1. That is why many prefer having their cash directly in their phones.
A prolonged conflict in the Horn of African nation has seen the destruction of the country's currency. Instead, the country has seen a dollarized economy that supersedes the use of cash.
Mobile payment is free of charge in Somalia. This will have a negative impact to the government when it introduces new currency. It's not wise for the entire society to rely on mobile payment because it has its own challenges. The government also has to regulate it.
A research by the World Bank also indicates that approximately 155 million transactions worth $2.7 billion, or roughly 36% of the gross domestic product, are recorded every month, making Somalia one of the most active mobile money markets in the African continent. Abdelaziz Bouteflika, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
And on to West Africa, a large percentage of Sierra Leone's population does not have access to a line of credit, but a U.S. firm is looking to change that. Kibra, a San Francisco-based tech charity, is using blockchain to create an online ID database in Sierra Leone. It will allow people who struggle to get loans to prove their credit history. CGTN's Alexandria Majala has more.
Sierra Leonean teacher Nancy Barmoy lost her identity card and could no longer apply for a loan as banks could not look up her credit history. She's not alone here. According to the central bank, more than 3/4 of Sierra Leone's population lies outside the formal banking sector. Informal institutions like community banks and microfinance lenders are more common, but they rarely share credit information and often charge extortionate interest rates.
Some of the barrier to that access is related to the ability to open a bank account, right? So the KYC process, and be able to provide an identity that's verifiable to a bank or MFI partner. By using the National Digital Identity Program, we're effectively providing a digital identity to every adult in Sierra Leone that they can use as part of a client onboarding process when opening a new bank account. So we think the punchline of all that is we will expand financial access and inclusion in Sierra Leone.
Kibra officially launched the system in Freetown, Sierra Leone's capital, on August 21st. It was then that Barmoy became the first citizen to get a national digital ID and was able to carry out an electronic Know Your Customer or EKYC check-in with just her fingerprint. This made her credit history and financial data available to banks and lending institutions.
Problems come to you every day, and if you don't have a place to collect money from, you will get more problems immediately. If you're able to save money, you're able to solve them. If you're not able to save, you're not able to solve your problems. You would die of a sickness that would not have killed you otherwise because you didn't have any money and no one was able to trust you in the community.
The platform will enable lenders to look up citizens' credit histories using fingerprints and other biometric data that was collected a few years ago by Sierra Leone's government to print voter ID cards. Each prospective borrower will be assigned a digital wallet with transactions recorded in blockchain to keep user information secure and prevent tampering with the ledger.
We have radically changed Sierra Leone's financial inclusion landscape and made it possible to access and deliver economic and other opportunities to every Sierra Leonean.
Borrowers will access the wallet through an app. That, however, presents a problem for many in Sierra Leone, where the Information Ministry says less than 15% have access to the internet. Kibra's partners in the field, including banks, have overcome this hurdle by using MiFi devices that connect to the internet via phone networks. The West African nation's government aims to have the system in use by all banks and microfinance institutions in the country by the end of this year. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
A trainee pilot in Australia was forced to make an emergency landing of a small aircraft on Saturday after his instructor fell unconscious. Max Sylvester was having his first lesson behind the controls of a single propeller two-seat Cessna 152 when the incident occurred. He said his aviation studies saved his life. Sylvester called air traffic control in Western Australia State and said that the instructor was leaning over his shoulder and he was having trouble keeping him up. The controller then guided Sylvester through the landing after the trainee pilot told him it was his first lesson. Sylvester landed the plane safely at Jandakot Airport.
I was pretty messed up in the head, to be honest. It was pretty hard to know that my instructor wasn't doing too well. So it was just a matter of getting us down to the ground and getting onto the right station to actually, talk to somebody to help us down. It's just one of the things you train for it when you're in your 20s and 30 hours, not 2.4 hours. You don't train for this type of stuff, so you just got to either have the passion for aviation and actually just do your study, because that's what kept me alive as well, is my study.
Well, we've got your sports news coming up after the break. Don't go away, don't touch that dial. Here's a look at the headline. Springboks captain Nta Kolisi returns to face Japan ahead of the Rugby World Cup.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's talk a bit of rugby. Let's begin with South Africa, who named a strong side on Tuesday for their final Rugby World Cup warm-up match against host Japan. Springboks head coach Rassie Erasmus says Friday's contest could be the perfect preparation for his side ahead of their tournament opener against New Zealand. Erasmus made sweeping changes to the squad that claimed victory over Argentina last month, with captain Nta Kolisi returning at flank for Friday's clash in Kumagaya. Kolisi's inclusion is the only difference from the 23-man squad for the draw with New Zealand in July, which means Japan can expect to face the full might of the Springboks.